Hello and welcome all of you in the explained section of Indian economy, and in today we are discussing a very important concept, that is the concept of core of inflation. So when we try to understand that the idea of inflation is about price rise in the economy, the aggregate level. So the article of the Indian Express mainly talks about the core of the inflation, and we have to understand that how it is being addressed. So if we understand the data of current data, inflation in India is 3.16%. This is the headline inflation. Headline means the inflation of the country, जो हम measure करते हैं. And when we have core inflation at 4%. Core inflation means inflation of non-food, non-fuel. Non-food, non-fuel. Yani this is the inflation where we remove the food and fuel component. And why do we remove it? Because ये बहुत ही volatile है, and because of being volatility, we need to understand that how, if we remove food and fuel, how the inflation gets impacted. Now coming to the repo rate. Repo rate is the policy rate of the economy. सारे interest rate repo rate पे depend करते हैं. So repo rate also reduced from 6.5% to 6%. यानी if you try to see in the last few months from Feb 2000, अगर आप देखते हैं तो from Feb 2023 till 2025, the repo rate was 6.5% and the inflation was 5.2%. Now inflation after Feb 2025 हमने repo rate को 6% तक ले आ दिया है. Now that means the inflation is moderating. Inflation soften हो रहा है, moderate हो रहा है, and the repo rate also being reduced. The food inflation is 7.6%. हमारा जो food inflation है वो 7.6% है, रहा है इस फेज में. The same phase the food inflation was there. 4 plus minus 2% जो है ये हमारा inflation targeting है. What is the meaning? The inflation has to be in this range if the economy has to sustain. तो ये RBI का जो inflation targeting agenda है, here inflation has to be in this range. तो we have to make sure कि inflation इस range में रहे, and based जब inflation soften हुआ, then only RBI was able to reduce the repo rate. Now when you try to understand from the economy's perspective, there are two things. Now when do we reduce repo rate? Repo rate कब कम करते हैं? When the inflation comes in the range of 2 to 6%, that means 3%, 4%. तो आप repo rate कम करोगे, so that interest rates are moderate in the economy, because higher interest rate is not good for the economy. Higher interest rate से जो challenge आता है, loans are costly, the business is costly. So एक डिबेट ये चल रही है, should we reduce repo rate? Repo rate को कम करना चाहिए, but for that you need to understand the data of the inflation. Now we try to understand. आप ये देखिए, food inflation was higher in 2023-24. So food inflation is higher, which means during this phase हमारा repo rate 6.5% था. After the moderation of repo rate जब moderate हुआ, now you can see here, यहाँ पे 6.5 था, and today it is around, currently it is 6.6%. Now if you try to see the average inflation इस टाइम ज्यादा था relatively, the general inflation, CPI general, इसको हम CPI combined भी बोलते हैं. Then the core inflation आप देखो, core inflation was on the lower side. Core inflation means inflation without food and fuel. Now एक debate ये आ रही है कि when the inflation was high, and वो inflation क्यों ज्यादा था? Because of the food inflation. Because food inflation was high, तो हमारा repo rate भी high था. So that interest rates are अगर higher रहेंगे तो demand of money will be lesser and inflation जो है control हो जाएगा. So when the food inflation was high, but एक debate ये चली that why should food inflation, because food inflation में RBI का कोई रोल नहीं होना चाहिए, because RBI cannot control food inflation. But RBI क्या करता था that in spite of being a food inflation being a supply side issue, RBI used to increase their interest rate. तो economy suffer करती है, because on the you're putting repo rate on the higher side in spite of the factor of inflation is not because of RBI. RBI cannot control food inflation because there is a problem जो है structural economy का है, supply side issue है. That means the monsoon factors are there, food supply, all those things are there. So it is very natural that अभी लेकिन क्या हो रहा है? The inflation is moderated and it is expected that repo rate might come down. Repo rate शायद कम हो जाएगा. Now let's understand last year what happened. Inflation was also high and repo rate was also high. So why inflation was high? Because of geopolitics. And because of geopolitics, the agricultural prices went up. The Russia-Ukraine war that is continuing from last 2 years. El Nino effect. Now because of El Nino एक abnormal Pacific Ocean में abnormal warming होता है and that leads to subpar monsoon. हमारा monsoon weak हो जाता है because of El Nino which happens in the Western Pacific Ocean around the coast of Peru and Chile. So El Nino is a process वहाँ पे हर every 5-7 years El Nino comes and it impacts the food production. It impacts the monsoon of the economy और उससे हमारे यहाँ food production gets impacted. It creates a supply side issues and food inflation might happen. Then winter rain. Now because of abnormality of the rainfall, winter rain, again the food prices, winter rain happens on the eastern coast of India जब monsoon retreat करता है. So this is also a challenge. So all of this has led to a situation where the food inflation has gone up. And because of the food inflation, the inflation has gone up. Inflation भी ऊपर हो गया है. Okay, so there is a supply side bottleneck leading to higher food inflation. Now question comes that what should be done? करना क्या चाहिए? Now here RBI was putting repo rate on the higher side, but RBI repo rate जब higher side पे रखता था, the idea behind higher repo rate on RBI was to control the inflation because inflation is on the higher side. Inflation was 5.2% on an average. अभी आपने पिछले चार्ट में देखा that inflation is high, and the inflation is high not because of core inflation, because of food inflation. In fact, our Commerce Minister said that it is absurd that RBI is putting higher repo rate because of the food inflation. Food inflation की वजह से RBI repo rate क्यों ऊपर रख रही है? Because the food inflation is not because of these are because of external factors which RBI cannot control. Instead, RBI will make the loan costlier and economy suffers. Okay, repo rate जब बढ़ेगा तो economy suffer होगी. Now, should RBI reduce repo rate? Now, the next question that should be asked, because should RBI reduce repo rate? Now, here there are factors which are positive. For example, end of El Nino. Now, El Nino has ended, and because El Nino has ended, so that has led to another situation. La Nina. El Nino has ended, and La Nina. La Nina is opposite of El Nino. That means the monsoon favorable होगा. And because of monsoon being favorable, there is better Kharif crop and Rabi crop will also. The जो अभी Kharif crop हुआ है, that is good, and Rabi we are expecting good. Then low food inflation. Now this will call low food inflation because food supply will remain intact. The lower oil prices. Now Brent crude is trading at $65 per barrel, and last अभी ये 75 पे था, then 83 it was last year. So lower oil prices. The rupee is stabilizing. Now this reciprocal tariff war, Trump's new policy. Now that has been causing rupee to fluctuate. और investment left India और India का जो है forex भी कम हो गया था. But rupee is stabilizing and forex has also increased. India का जो forex है वो भी बढ़ गया है. Forex means foreign exchange reserve. Then cheap imports from China and Vietnam is also causing inflation. एक dumping भी हो रहा है, and here government has put counter duty. So overall अगर आप देखेंगे, this all factors has led to where inflation might come down. Inflation will moderate, inflation will soften. But there is one more factor. जो हमारा the core inflation is still 4%. The core inflation is 4%. And headline inflation is 3%. Opposite of what it was 2 years ago, last year. And आपका जो food inflation है, that is less than 2% right now. So एक new debate है that in the beginning debate ये था, let's have repo rate based on core inflation. Now because overall inflation is down, but core inflation is on the higher side. Not exactly higher, but little more than the headline inflation. Headline inflation is the inflation of the economy. So ये debate last year चली थी, and when you try to look from UPSC's perspective, UPSC जो question पूछता है, now if you see the last 2 years of inflation trends, economy's question यहीं से आएंगे. What are the causes of high food inflation in India? Comment on the effectiveness of monetary policy of the RBI to control this type of inflation. Now, what is the causes? We already know. Ukraine-Russia war, we just discussed. El Nino, winter rain, all these has led to a situation where average the food prices went up. But RBI ने क्या किया? RBI ने उसको control करने के लिए repo rate. Okay, RBI went ahead with. So first part is the causes of high inflation, which you can list 1, 2, 3, 4, already discussed. Effectiveness of monetary policy, RBI using money supply to control food inflation is not the right approach, because this is a debate always among the economists that RBI की जो policy है that is not effective. Had the issue had been money related, then RBI का policy effective होता. But here food inflation हो रहा है and RBI repo rate increase करके overall economy को का slow down कर दे रहा है, and that is not good for economy from perspective. So monetary policy की जो effectiveness है, that is being questioned, and you can correlate that UPSC is going to ask questions from the current trend which is there in the economy. So definitely you can give that the issue of inflation in India is because of supply side, food and fuel, which RBI cannot control. So RBI should create a mechanism where they can, in future, if the food and fuel is the major factor of inflation, can RBI look at alternate way? Can core inflation should be the anchor of the inflation or not? Now these things have to be discussed. So you can see that mains के questions जो आते हैं, they are current related topics, and if you have understanding of the economy, you will be able to solve them very effectively. Okay, so that is it. Then coming to now let's try to solve some question. Disflation. In relation to disflation, answer the following statement. It can be understood as slowing down rate of inflation. So inflation is 6%, it has come down to 4%. This is called disflation. Inflation is coming down. Measures employed are to ease impact of inflation on common man. Yes, when the inflation is high, government will take measures, RBI will take measure to reduce the inflation. तो उसको हम disinflation कहते हैं. Answer is C is the right answer. Both option 1 and 2 are correct. Then coming to second question. With reference to what are the reasons for demand pull inflation? Increasing population, increasing in the income levels, increase in consumerism in society, and increase in the supply or liquidity in the economy. Now here again, when you try to look at it, population बढ़ेगा तो demand बढ़ेगा. Yes, inflation will increase. That's right. Increase in income level. If the income will increase, demand will increase. This is also right. Increase in consumerism. Consumerism, people are consumer driven. They are producing consumer goods. They are consuming consumer goods. So this will also increase demand in the economy. And if you increase money supply, again inflation will go up. So when you try to look at the statement D, all the 4 options are correct. So when you are trying to study these topics, explained section pe I'm going to create videos regularly. Try to understand the questions in UPSC examination, prelims and mains will come from the topics which are in news. Okay, so that is all for today. Thank you very much. Like the video and subscribe to the channel and be regular for preparation updates. God bless you. Bye.